Emily's story and the eternal horror. Emily was a young journalist working for a mystery magazine. She was always looking for exciting stories that would make readers shudder. When she heard about an old house in a small village that was said to be haunted by evil spirits, she couldn't resist her curiosity. The house had been abandoned for over 100 years, and it was rumored that no one who had entered it had ever left unscathed. The locals avoided talking about it, but Emily was determined to uncover the truth. Emily arrived in the village on a cloudy day, and the sky was covered with black clouds. The atmosphere was charged with gloom, as if nature itself was warning her not to go any further. She rented a small room in an old inn, and when she asked the innkeeper about the house, his expression changed suddenly. He said to her in a low voice, "No one goes there. The house is not just ruins, it is a trap for spirits." But Emily did not back down. She believed that these were just superstitions and that she would find a great story to write. The next morning, she headed home. It was located at the end of a long road surrounded by dead trees. When she arrived, she felt a strange coldness, even though it wasn't cold. The front door was slightly open, as if inviting her in. She stepped inside the house, and the darkness was so thick that she could barely see what was around her. Suddenly, the door slammed behind her, making her jump. She tried to open it again, but it was firmly locked. The house was filled with dust, and the walls were covered in strange drawings. There was a faint sound that sounded like a whisper, but it wasn't clear enough to understand. As she explored the rooms, she found a small library containing old books. One of the books looked different from the rest. It was covered in a layer of ash, as if it had been touched by fire. When she opened it, she discovered that it was the diary of a person named Jonathan. Jonathan was the scientist who had lived in the house over 100 years ago. The diary spoke of his strange experiences and his obsession with searching for the other world. He stated that he had performed a dangerous ritual that had opened a portal to the world of shadows. "I opened something I could not close. The shadows became a part of me, and I became a part of them." As she read, she felt the air around her grow heavier. She raised her head and saw a tall shadow standing in the corner. It had no distinct features, but its eyes glowed red. Emily tried to back away, but the shadow began to approach her. Suddenly, the lamp she was holding went out, and she was plunged into darkness. She felt a cold hand touch her shoulder and heard a voice say, "You have returned. Now you are a part of this place." The Cursed Rooms. After regaining her courage, she decided to explore more of the house. Each room held a new mystery. In one room, she found old dolls that moved slowly as she entered the room. In another room, there was a mirror that showed reflections of another world filled with shadows. In the basement, she found an altar covered in dried blood, with strange symbols engraved on it. Emily began to realize that the house was not just a haunted place, but a trap for spirits. The shadows were not ordinary ghosts, but the remains of the spirits of Jonathan's followers, who had turned into evil entities after their rituals failed. The diary stated that the only way to close the portal was to collect 5 items scattered around the house. 1. An old clock containing Jonathan's blood. 2. A broken mirror that reflected the truth. 3. A candle covered in ash. 4th, a silver ring that had belonged to Jonathan's wife, the book of the original rituals. After Emily gathered the 5 items needed to close the portal, she felt the house begin to collapse from the inside. The walls were making eerie cracking sounds, and the floor was shaking beneath her feet. The shadows were becoming more aggressive, as if trying to prevent her from completing the ritual. In the center of the main hall, Emily placed the 5 items on an ancient altar covered in the strange symbols. The book was open in front of her, and the words written on it seemed to move. She began to read aloud, but suddenly all the lights went out, and she was plunged into complete darkness. In the darkness, Emily felt cold breaths approaching her. Strange whispering sounds surrounded her from every direction, as if the shadows were trying to enter her mind. She heard a deep voice say, "You will not destroy us. We are here forever." Suddenly, she felt a strong hand grab her arm and pull her away from the altar. She tried to resist, but she felt as if her body was strangely heavy. Shadows began to swirl around her, and she began to see blurry images of people who had been trapped in this house before, all screaming in eternal agony. As the shadows were about to take complete control of her, a dim light appeared in the corner. It was a man wearing a long coat, his face covered by a metal mask. He said in a calm yet powerful voice, "Don't be afraid, I'm here to help you." The mysterious man used a strange wand to repel the shadows and asked Emily to hurry up and complete the ritual. He told her that he was one of the survivors who had tried to close the portal before her, but had failed and was trapped in this place. As Emily completed the ritual, the man began to reveal more truths. He told her that Jonathan was not just an ordinary scientist, but a magician obsessed with immortality. He opened the portal not only to communicate with the world of shadows, but to become its master. Jonathan is not dead. His spirit is the one controlling the shadows now. If we don't stop him, he will find his way to our world. As Emily spoke the final words of the ritual, Jonathan's spirit appeared before her. He looked like a mix of human and shadow, his face distorted and his features blurred. He said in a voice filled with anger, "You wouldn't dare close the portal. This is my world now." The mysterious man tried to confront him, but Jonathan was stronger than he expected. The fight turned into a fierce battle between light and darkness, while Emily tried to focus on completing the ritual. At a crucial moment, the mysterious man realized that the only way to defeat Jonathan was to sacrifice himself. He threw his staff to Emily and said, "Use it to complete the ritual. Don't let my sacrifice be in vain." He rushed towards Jonathan, releasing a blast of light that weakened the shadows for a moment. Emily took advantage of the opportunity and completed the final words of the ritual. When it was over, the portal began to make a loud sound, as if it was collapsing from the inside. The shadows began to disappear one by one, and Jonathan's spirit let out a final scream before being dragged into the portal. The whole house started to collapse, and Emily ran as fast as she could to get out. She arrived outside just as the whole house collapsed, leaving behind a deep hole where the gate had been. Emily was back in the city, but she wasn't the same as before. She felt like there was always something watching her, as if the shadows had never completely disappeared. One night, while sitting in her room, she heard a whisper very close by saying, "You closed the gate, but you opened something else." Emily froze in place after hearing the whisper. The room was dark, but the shadows she knew so well seemed to be moving slowly on the walls. She approached the window, trying to check if anyone was outside, but all she saw was the deserted street. However, the voice continued to whisper, but this time it was closer, as if someone was speaking directly into her ear. "You are the one who chose this path. We are a part of you now." Emily decided that she would not live in constant fear. She returned to the old library where she had first found the book, but she found the place in a state of chaos, as if someone had broken into it. The shelves were upside down, and the books were scattered on the floor. As she searched, she found a small piece of paper written in strange handwriting that read, "You cannot escape what you have seen. Every gate that closes, another door opens. Come to the attached address if you want to know the truth." The address was an abandoned place on the outskirts of town, known to be an old factory that was rumored to be haunted. When Emily arrived at the factory, she felt an unnatural chill. The place was filled with the same strange symbols she had seen in the book. Suddenly, the dim lights she had relied on went out, and she found herself enveloped in total darkness. The sound of footsteps began to approach her, and then an old man appeared, carrying a lamp. He said to her, "I saw you coming. You are now a part of this world, whether you wanted to or not." The man told her that the shadows she had encountered were only the beginning. There were greater forces trying to cross into our world, and the ritual she had performed had closed one gate but opened another, deeper and more dangerous. Emily found herself faced with two choices: either forget everything and try to live normally, or face these forces and become a guardian between the two worlds. The man gave her a new book, more mysterious than the first, and said, "This book contains their secrets, but beware, every answer comes at a price." Emily returned to her home, but she could not sleep. The book was on the table in front of her, pulsing as if it were alive. When she opened it, a phrase written in blood appeared on the first page: "Welcome to our world. And from here began her new journey, as she came to realize that this was not the end of the story, but only the beginning of a world full of horror and mystery. Over the following nights, Emily began to feel strange changes in her life. The strange sounds returned, but this time they were more pronounced. New shadows began to appear in the corners of the rooms, moving unnaturally as if they were watching her. One night, she was awakened by a loud knock on her door. When she opened the door, she found no one, but there was a small box sitting on the threshold. Inside the box, she found an old mirror covered in ash, and when she looked into it, she saw familiar faces. Those were the faces of people who had been tormented by the shadows in the past. The mirror was a new key to understanding what was happening. When she focused on it, she began to see scenes from the world of shadows. Another portal was opening in an unknown place, and terrifying creatures were preparing to cross. Emily decided that she would not stand idly by. She turned to the new book, which revealed to her a more powerful ritual to close the portals once and for all. But the book warned her, this ritual would require a great sacrifice and she might not survive it. As she tried to prepare for the ritual, a huge entity appeared to her, larger than anything she had ever seen before. The entity was the leader of the shadows, named Elith, and his goal was to take over the human world. Elith spoke to her in a deep, terrifying voice. "Emily, you have become part of us. Why are you fighting? Join us and we will grant you unstoppable power." But Emily rejected the offer and vowed to fight the darkness until the end. Emily knew that the ritual she needed to seal the portal would draw Elith and his army to her place. She chose the largest room in her house as the stage for the battle. She drew the mysterious symbols from the new book on the floor and lit the black candles that were an essential part of the ritual. As midnight approached, the air in the room began to thicken and the shadows on the walls grew denser. Suddenly, a dark portal opened in the center of the room, and Elith emerged, surrounded by shadow creatures, with terrifying shapes and voices resembling the screams of the tortured. Elith smiled sarcastically, saying, "Do you think these symbols will stop me? The entire world will be mine." But Emily was prepared. The new book had revealed to her that she had an inner power, and that the shadows had chosen her in the first place because they carried a part of her energy. She focused on that energy, closing her eyes, feeling a strange pulsation coursing through her body. With every word of the ritual, the shadows tried to stop her, but their power grew stronger. Suddenly, a circle of light exploded around her, causing the dark creatures to retreat. Elith sensed danger and attacked her directly, but Emily summoned her last remaining strength and shouted the last words of the ritual. The room shook violently, and the gates slowly began to close. But Elith grabbed her hand, trying to pull her along with him. Emily realized that the ritual would not be completed unless she sacrificed herself. With a look full of determination, she said, "I will not allow you to destroy this world." She jumped into the gate with Elith, causing it to close completely. The room returned to its calm, but Emily disappeared. Days passed, and no one heard from Emily again. But her house became a strange place, where everyone who entered it felt the presence of a mysterious energy. One day, her old friend Jack found the book lying on the floor. When he opened it, a phrase written in fresh blood appeared. "I am always here, watching." While everyone thought Emily was gone forever, strange things started happening in town. People who were close to her started having recurring nightmares. In these nightmares, they would see Emily, but her face was distorted and her eyes glowed red. Jack, who had found the book, felt that Emily was trying to communicate with him. He decided to return to her house, where he found the ancient symbols on the floor distorted, as if someone had tried to change them. When Jack tried to read the book, it automatically opened to a new page that had not been there before. The page contained a message written in Emily's handwriting. "I have become a part of them, but I have not lost hope. The gate is not completely closed. You will need to complete the ritual to save me." Jack realized that Emily was trapped in the shadow realm, and that if he did not act quickly, she might become a part of the greater entity forever. Jack began searching for a way to summon Elith again, but this time, he had to be more careful. The new ritual required the use of his own blood as a sacrifice, which made him vulnerable to the shadows. As the ritual began, he felt the room become unbearably cold. Shadows began to move around him, and strange sounds filled the place. Suddenly, Emily appeared, but her appearance was different. Her face was full of scars, and her red eyes were looking straight at him. "Jack, why did you come? You should have left me here." Jack, despite his fear, stood firm and said, "Emily, I will not leave you here. I will bring you back to our world no matter the cost." Emily, with a voice mixed between sadness and anger, replied, "It's not just me. The shadows have become a part of me, and I am a part of them. If you try to save me, you will put yourself in greater danger." But Jack did not back down. He grabbed the book and began to recite the reverse ritual he had learned. The words were heavy, as if they burned his throat with every word he spoke. The room filled with the screams of shadows, and their shapes began to gather around Emily, trying to prevent Jack from completing the ritual. With every word, the shadows attacked Jack, but he continued despite the pain. Suddenly, light began to emanate from the symbols on the ground, causing the shadows to retreat slightly. Emily began to scream, not from pain, but as if trying to warn Jack. "Stop! If you complete the ritual, the portal will open completely, and Elith will emerge with his full power." But Jack had no choice. He knew that taking the risk was the only way to save her. As he spoke the last words, the room exploded with a bright light, and a loud scream was heard from Elith. When everything was quiet, Jack found himself alone in the room. The symbols were gone, and the book had turned to ash. But he noticed something strange. The ancient mirror that had been part of the ritual was now sitting in the middle of the room. When he looked into it, he saw Emily, but she was trapped inside the mirror. Her face was calm, but she couldn't speak. On the mirror were engraved the words, "I saved her, but now you are a prisoner of the shadows." Jack felt a cold hand touch his shoulder. When he turned around, there was no one there, but the shadows began to appear around him again. Jack realized that he was now the new link between the shadow world and the human world. Emily was freed from Elith's control, but she would never return to her body. As for Jack, he had become the new target of the greater entity. After Jack realized that he had become the link between the two worlds, he began to feel changes inside him. The shadows that hovered around him were no longer attacking him, but had become a part of him. He began to hear their whispers in his head, telling him about the secrets of the shadow world and about a power hidden within it. Emily, trapped inside the mirror, watched him sadly. She tried to signal him something, but the voice of the shadows drowned everything out. Suddenly, new words appeared on the surface of the mirror. "Jack, you have a choice. You can end all of this, but the price will be your soul." Jack's decision. Jack realized that the shadows wanted to use him as a gateway to Elith's return and his full power, but he knew that he had the power to stop them, even if it meant sacrificing himself. Jack began searching inside his mind for the final ritual that could seal the shadow world forever. The shadows tried to tempt him with power and immortality, but they could not break his will. Emily, despite being trapped in the mirror, was able to send him a part of her energy. When he touched the surface of the mirror, he felt a strange warmth and calm, as if it gave him the strength to face the darkness. Jack began drawing new symbols on the ground using his blood. This ritual was completely different from anything he had seen in the book. With each symbol, the shadows screamed and tried to stop him, but the light emanating from the symbols burned them away. Emily, from inside the mirror, chanted the words with him. The room was filled with energy, and the gate that had been closed began to reappear. This time, the goal was not to open it, but to destroy it completely. Confrontation with Elith. As Jack neared the end of the ritual, Elith appeared again, but this time he was weaker. "Jack, you don't understand. If you destroy the gate, you will destroy the balance between the two worlds. You will create uncontrollable chaos." But Jack didn't stop. With a final scream, he spoke the final words, causing a massive explosion of light. Elith screamed loudly before fading away, along with all the shadows. When Jack woke up, he found himself in Emily's house, but everything was quiet. The mirror was gone. The symbols were gone. He felt like a heavy burden had been lifted. But when he looked at his hands, he saw the shadows still there, as if they were part of him now. At night, when he looked at his reflection in the window, he saw his eyes glowing red. Weeks passed after the final confrontation, and Jack returned to his daily life. But he was not the same as before. He felt that there was something strange inside him. At first, things seemed normal, but he began to notice strange phenomena happening around him. The lights in his house would flicker inexplicably, and faint whispering sounds would echo through the house at night. More importantly, he would see shadows moving in the corners of his eyes, but they would disappear as soon as he turned his head. The strange dream. One night, Jack dreamed that he was standing in front of a large gate of darkness. A deep voice said, "Jack, you are now the guardian of balance. You cannot escape your fate." When he woke up, he found a new inscription on his hand, similar to the symbols he had used in the final rituals. The inscription was pulsating as if it were alive. Jack decided to visit an old library in town, where he believed there were ancient books that talked about shadows. There he met a strange person named Elias, an old man who seemed to know everything about the world of shadows. Elias told him a terrifying truth. When you closed the portal, you didn't destroy the shadows. You became the portal. Everything that was in the shadow world is now connected to you. If you lose control, Elias will return through you. Jack realized that the darkness inside him was growing. Whenever he felt angry or sad, the shadows grew stronger, and he could hear Elias' voice whispering to him, trying to lure him into using the power within him. One stormy night, as Jack tried to sleep, he found himself in a dreamlike world, but more real. He was surrounded by shadows, and in the middle of them stood Elias. "Jack, why do you resist? This power can be yours. You can control both worlds." But Jack wasn't ready to give up. He began to remember Emily's words and how she had sacrificed herself to try to save him. In a strong voice, he said, "I will not let you control me. This is your end." Jack, with Elias's help, began to search for a way to seal the darkness inside him forever. The ritual required a great sacrifice, his life. As he began the ritual, he felt the shadows trying to stop him. Elith appeared again, this time more powerful, trying to stop him. But Jack, with a heart full of determination, completed the ritual. As he spoke the last words, he felt his body crumble. The shadows began to fade, and Elith with them. But he knew that this was the price he had to pay. When Jack woke up, he found himself in a strange place. He was surrounded by light, but he wasn't sure if this was the other world or just a dream. Somewhere in town, a new mirror appeared in an old shop, and on its surface was an inscription that said, "Jack saved us all, but shadows never die." The new mirror appears. The old store where the mirror appeared was strange and deserted, but it began to attract people's attention. Passers-by felt a strange desire to enter, as if something was calling them. On the surface of the mirror, the words were glowing with a dim light, as if they were coming to life. One night, a young girl named Sophie entered the store. She was suffering from recurring nightmares about shadows, as if she was seeing events from Jack's life without knowing who he was. When she stood in front of the mirror, she felt something pulling her. She reached out to touch the surface, and suddenly, Jack's reflection appeared in the mirror. Jack, who was now trapped in the world of shadows, was able to communicate with Sophie. He said to her, "Sophie, you are the new key. The shadows are looking for you because you carry the light that can destroy them. You have to be strong." Sophie did not understand what he meant, but suddenly she began to see visions of the rituals Jack performed and of the sacrifice he made. She understood that the shadows had not been completely defeated and that they were now searching for a new way to return to the real world. The shadows infiltrate the world. As time passed, the shadows began to appear again, but this time they were more intelligent. They were sneaking into people's dreams, instilling fear and anger in them. Sophie was the only one who could see them, and she knew she had to act before it was too late. Sophie began searching for the ritual book that Jack had used. She found Elias, the old man who had helped Jack, who told her that the book was now lost, but gave her a map that led her to a place believed to hold the answers. Sophie set off on a journey into the dark forest where the book was said to be buried. Along the way, she encountered terrifying visions of what the world would look like if the shadows returned. She saw cities in ruins and people enslaved by the darkness. When she arrived at the site, she found a dark cave filled with ancient symbols. Inside, there was a statue of Jack, holding the book in his hands. As she approached, she heard his voice say, "Sophie, this is your chance to finish what you started. But be careful, the shadows are stronger than you think." When she opened the book, she felt a tremendous energy rushing towards her. Shadows appeared around her, trying to prevent her from completing the ritual. But Sophie, using the power of the light within her, began to chant the words. Elith appeared again, this time more ferocious. He tried to attack her, but the light she released was stronger. In a flash, the light exploded, completely obliterating the shadows and Elith. When it was all over, the book was gone, and Jack was gone. Sophie returned to town, but the mirror in the old shop remained. There was a new inscription that read, "Light and darkness are always in conflict. This is not the end." After the shadows disappeared, Sophie felt a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. She returned to her daily life, but things were not the same. She could notice subtle changes in the world around her. The atmosphere became calmer, and the disturbing dreams that haunted people had faded. However, she felt that something was not over yet. The mysterious mirror. The old store where the mirror was located had become a destination for many curious people. People talked about a strange feeling they got when standing in front of it. Some said they saw reflections of people who were not there, while others heard mysterious whispers. Sophie decided to return to the store to see if there was any new trace. When she stood in front of the mirror, she felt a strange energy emanating from it. This time, there was no reflection of Jack, but rather a reflection of her own face. But it was different. She looked mysterious, as if she was part of another world. As she watched her reflection, words appeared on the mirror's surface. "The light within you saved the world, but the darkness is not gone. It will return when the new guardian weakens." Sophie realized that she had become the new guardian of the balance between light and darkness. The responsibility was heavy, but she knew she could not escape it. A few days after her visit to the mirror, Sophie received a mysterious letter written in an old handwriting. The letter was signed Elias, but it had disappeared since the last encounter. In the letter, there was a warning. "Sophie, the light within you is strong, but it depends on your inner strength. If you allow fear or doubt to creep into your heart, the darkness will find its way back." It wasn't long before Sophie began to notice that some people in town were acting strangely. They spoke in a cold tone, as if they were under the influence of an invisible force. She soon discovered that the shadows were no longer their old form, but were now creeping into people's hearts using their weakness and fear. Sophie realized that she could not face this threat alone. She began to search for people who could help her. She met a group of people who had suffered from the influence of the shadows, but showed internal resistance. They were like her, carrying a spark of light within them. As the shadows prepared for a new round of attack, Sophie and her team were also preparing. Using the knowledge she had gained from Jack and the ancient book, she began to train the team to use their inner strength. The mirror became the center of the upcoming battle. It was the gateway that the darkness was trying to use to return, but it was also the source of the light that could destroy them forever. As the days passed, the influence of the shadows began to expand, and the town fell into chaos. People affected by the shadows began to form mysterious groups, performing strange rituals near the old store where the mirror was located. Sophie and her team knew that the final battle was approaching. The mirror was the focal point, and the shadows were trying to open a new portal using it. One night, as Sophie contemplated the mirror, new words appeared on its surface. "Darkness will return when the moon is full. The ancient ritual is the solution, but time is running out." Sophie knew that she had to find the ancient ritual that had not been used for centuries. She remembered Elias's map and decided to return to the cave where she had found the first book. When Sophie and her team arrived at the cave, the place was different this time. The symbols on the walls were glowing red, as if warning them of impending danger. Deep inside the cave, they found a new book, but it was locked with a mysterious chain. As they tried to undo the chain, shadows appeared out of nowhere, violently attacking them. Sophie's team used their inner strength to repel the attack, but the shadows were stronger than before. Thanks to the courage of one of the team members, they were able to break the chain and open the book. The ritual written within it was extremely complex, but it carried clear instructions on how to use the light to banish the darkness forever. The ritual required a great sacrifice. Someone who carried the light must unite with the mirror and become a part of it, preventing the darkness from using it again. Sophie realized that the sacrifice had to be from her. She was the new guardian, and she knew that the light within her was the only one who could seal the gate forever. When they returned to the town, the sky was overcast and the full moon shone eerily. Shadows filled the streets, surrounding the old store. Inside the store, Sophie stood in front of the mirror, reading the words from the book aloud. The shadows were trying to break through the barrier that her team had formed to protect her. With each word, the mirror shone brighter, until it became like the rising sun. As Sophie said the last words, she felt a tremendous energy pulling her towards the mirror. Her reflection began to fade, and with it, the shadows began to fade. After Sophie disappeared, the town returned to normal. The mirror had become an ordinary piece of glass, devoid of any power. Her team stood before it, remembering her sacrifice and vowing to protect the world from any similar threat in the future. But somewhere deep within the mirror, there was a reflection of Sophie, silently watching, as if she was still guarding the gateway from the darkness. And so, Sophie's heroic journey comes to an end. Though she vanished into the darkness, her light will forever guard our world from evil. Do you think the darkness will ever return? And would anyone dare to open the mirror again? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling and captivating stories. See you in the next tale.